Hello, loyal viewers. You've made it to episode 2, which is a good thing because today we're going to be revisiting what was once a classic Dan the Norseman video, and we're going to be taking a look at the Sega Master System. Oh wait, no we're not, because the fucking power cable for my Master System broke. So I guess there's only one thing to do. Let's play some fucking Pokemon. Now I'm going to be looking at generations 1 through 4 and talking about the strengths and the weaknesses of each group of games. Why only generations 1 through 4? Because I've never played generations 5 or 6. Okay, let's start at the beginning. Generation 1. Although, we can't play my red version, because me, being a dumbass, I decided to hack it with a Game Genie at some point because I just had to have Mew. And you know what happened? I got Mew! But it turned my game into pretty much a creepypasta. My character is stuck in an eternal purgatory known as the bicycle path. And if he even ever tries to leave or dares to look into his inventory, so instead, we're going to be checking out Yellow version on my phone. Now, Pokemon Yellow version I consider to be the only game that I know of so far made of the show. Because I don't care that you can actually name your character, because it's pretty obvious that you play as Ash. Your first Pokemon is Pikachu, he follows you around, he won't stay in his Pokeball, you can interact with him, and on top of that, you can get all 3 of the original starters. I mean, those are the only ways that it differs from Red and Blue, but still, it is pretty obvious. As long as you could look past the monochromatic color scheme, there are 2 main things that really suck about Generation 1. Sorry, Gen 1ers. One of which is the pack. Instead of having different pockets, I mean, this is to be expected because this was the very first games, but instead of having different pockets, everything is all in one pouch. And it can get extremely fucking confusing. The other problem being the PC. You can't even go into your withdraw file to see what Pokemon you even have in the box unless you put some in. And on top of that, every time you change a box, you have to save the game. Now, I understand they're trying to, protect your save file or whatever, but it just gets fucking tedious. Aside from that, Generation 1 is a pretty solid group of games, don't get me wrong. I mean, it started what is now known as the Pokemon phenomenon, which continues to this day. Now let's move on to the masterpiece, the Pokepiece, if you will, that is Generation 2. Of course, we can't play my gold version because the save function broke. The internal battery is dead, I guess. So now I use it to prop up my TV because my stand is crooked. So instead, let's take a look at Crystal version, the special edition of Generation 2, the first game to introduce moving sprites, and, in my opinion, the greatest Pokemon game ever made, and actually one of my favorite games, period, ever made. Now this game had it all. Movable sprites, like I said earlier, a full color scheme, and in my opinion, one of the greatest soundtracks in all of 8-bit gaming. Another thing Generation 2 did that I never saw again was that, in fact, they had 16 gyms. Yes, 16, because after you beat the Johto gyms, you can go back to Kanto and re-beat all the games from Red and Blue, and eventually challenge Grand Champion Red on top of Mount Silver. Which, if you're like me and you played Pokemon Red or Blue, you saw it as your past self. And when you got up there, you're like, "Aw, shit's getting real." One thing that Generation 2 really fixed over Generation 1 is that they upgraded the pack. So now everything was put into different pockets, and it really fucking helped. This game also utilized the day and night system, which, as you can see, it's nighttime in my game, even though it's the middle of the fucking day right now, because I could never really get it to work right, but it was cool that they finally added that. And also keep in mind that there were certain Pokemon that you could only get at night, or only in the day. But one thing, and I mean the one fucking problem I have with this game, is that it's still got the retarded-ass PC system from fucking Generation 1. Now let's move on to what was for the longest time my least favorite generation, Generation 3. Now keep in mind I had both Ruby and Sapphire, but my ex-girlfriend let my Sapphire version get stolen, so now I'm stuck with Ruby, although I do have Emerald version on my phone. As you can see, I'm a girl, so I guess my ex was fucking around with this game too. But the main reasons that I never really liked Generation 3 were, at the time, after playing Generation 2 and after the whole 16 gym thing gave me such high expectations, the return to 8 gyms pissed me off. I was like, what the fuck? Another thing is I never really liked the game music, but my main reason is I hated, and straight up hated, to this day, the Generation 3 Pokemon sprites. Okay, maybe not their sprites, but their general looks is what I meant. And although there are some cool ones, it's just the designs on the Pokemon in Generations 1 and 2 were so good. They looked so fucking cool that, I don't know, the Generation 3 ones just look different and just like, you know, really fucking lame to me. One thing I never understood, although Pokemon Crystal version introduced the moving Pokemon sprites, Generation 3, which was technologically superior to Crystal version, didn't have the moving sprites. I mean, Emerald version did, but Ruby and Sapphire didn't. And I was like, well, why? What the fuck? That's weird. And another thing, they completely removed the day-night system, which was another thing I was used to. And although a lot of people like it, personally, I never really cared for the whole double battle thing. Even though I loved the double battle in this game. And of course, during Generation 3, we had the legendary Generation 1 remakes, Fire Red and Leaf Green. I, of course, have Fire Red. Now, these I really liked. Although I prefer the original 8-bit look and feel of the older games, this really did Generation 1 justice. Even though the only thing it really added was the whole Sevi Islands thing, but even that was well executed. You know what? I gotta give a thumbs up to Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. Last but not least, let's move on to Generation 4, being Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. Now, after playing and subsequently kind of hating Generation 3, I went into Generation 4 not expecting much. I thought it was just going to be some of the same old, fucked up bullshit, and that Pokemon had completely lost its luster. I was wrong. Generation 4 did a lot of things right. They didn't really make it look stupid with the graphics, because the characters are all 16-bit sprites on a kind of a 3D background, which I kind of like. Also, as you can see, it's nighttime. They returned the day-night system and fully integrated back into the moving sprites thing. And not to mention the fact, the Pokemon designs of this generation were back to the kind of feel of Generations 1 and 2. They really did good with these. I really liked them. And then they had the whole Pokegear thing, which had all these different apps on it, and honestly, a lot of them came in fucking handy. This was a very well-executed thing for the touchscreen on the DS. The only things I could say I really didn't like about Generation 4 is the world in which it takes place and the game music, but I don't know. After me hating Generation 3 so much, this was kind of a welcome return to an old feel for Pokemon. Let's move on to the final part of this episode, the Generation 2 remakes during Generation 4. I don't know why it's nighttime in all my Pokemon games today. That's fucking weird. But these are the remakes of the Generation 2 games, this one being a remake of Pokemon Silver, specifically. And I gotta say, damn. Now don't get me wrong, Crystal version is still my favorite, but that's mainly because I personally just prefer the look and feel of the 8-bit classics. That being said though, the revamped graphics and sound in these remakes is flawless. Not to mention the fact that you can have any Pokemon follow you, something that we haven't seen since Pokemon Yellow, and it's a great way to train Pokemon too. It's a really cool feature, especially if you can get some big scary fucking legendaries following you around. It looks kind of hilarious. And on top of that, the touchscreen, although it doesn't have that weird Pokegear thing like in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, it does work as kind of an item screen, and while you're in a battle, you could like select your attacks. And it's the best usage of the touchscreen in any of the Pokemon games. So even though I prefer the originals, from a technical standpoint, Heart Gold and Soul Silver could be considered the greatest Pokemon games. And one last thing, people are going to be asking me what I think of the Pokemon show. I could give a shit less about it. I didn't watch it after Season 2. Ash is the worst trainer I've ever fucking seen. The end.